right, good morning. So I titled this Thriving. So is your bank thriving or dying? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Banks are either going one way or another. They're either going to be successful in this new world of digital, or they're going to fail. I come from Chicago, just as a way of introduction. And I have seen the retail apocalypse firsthand in my own city. There was a company called Sears, which was the Amazon before there was an Amazon, and it was disrupted and it was put out of business. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how the evolution of banking has changed in digital. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tools I think that banks need to apply. And then lastly, I wanted to just tap into the things that Red Hat is doing in the open source way around bringing some of these tools to market. So what has changed? This picture should look familiar. This is, and I'll go through this relatively quickly because I don't need to explain banking for bankers' sake, because I understand that everyone here understands banking. But this is where it all began, right? It was Main Street, High Street. This is where people would do business. This is where the banks needed to be. This is where customers expected their bank to operate in. And this worked well for to be honest, for many years. If you see this picture, has anyone seen these before? They're still around. I mean, they're out there. They're the phone, right? And this is how if you think about it, this is how business was done outside of the branch. You had phones that you could use and you would put a coin in and you would make a phone call. And if you wanted to make an international call, you put a little bit more money in. And the retail banks of back then were a lot like that. They were simply branch-based. You could maybe call the call center, but you were hardwired into the bank. You also had a place where, if you think about it, the IT systems were also very centralized. So you had data centers, you had terminals, you had either someone from the call center who was picking up the phone on your behalf and then doing something within the bank. If you were in the branch, they had a terminal as well. So think of the days of mainframe. I thought this is useful. One of the interesting things that I've seen around the world is now that these are being transformed into power stations for mobile phones. So if you could talk about digital disruption, things like this are being transformed into something different, but still being useful. The reason I bring this up is I think it's important to understand what the heritage of the banks as they go forward. These, phones are still needed. The Main Street hasn't gone away, but it's not as important and powerful as it used to be. This is kind of Main Street 2.0. I mean, the shopping mall, if you think about it. Again, this is where there was some mobility. People could get in cars and they could drive around, and they could go into shopping malls. And these were fit-for-purpose areas where people could congregate. Of course, retailers had to change. Banking had to change. You now saw credit cards, and people use credit cards to do transactions. They think of the point-of-sale systems. You didn't have banknotes or currency anymore. There was some mobility. Anyone seen this? Remember the flip phone? Again, a little bit better than being hardwired into a dedicated phone, but now you could be a little bit more mobile. None of this is really game-changing at the moment. So if you think about it, banks still operate very much as a branch or call center-based business. You started to get a little bit of online activity. The internet became a thing. Banks started to experiment and do some things in online and mobile banking. But it was really early days. Just like every other good bank, they would take their online channel, and they would simply create another distribution mechanism for their banking products. But it really fundamentally didn't disrupt their business. To them, it was just an add-on to their existing business operations, and they had now an online banking portal. Then this started to happen. So this is kind of the Mall 3.0. What happens when you don't need branches anymore? What happens when people are shopping online? I went and I looked at the top websites for e-commerce traffic at Columbia, and I picked up a couple of them. One I think is based in Argentina, but they have a presence here in Colombia. This is now the new shopping mall. This is where people do commerce. It doesn't mean that the old shopping mall has gone away. There's still people go and visit it. I mean, I like to try on clothes. You can't always do that on an online forum. But I think that this has started to have more of a profound impact. Look, this isn't new. If I told you digitization, the digital trends of over the last 15 years was kind of like a slow-moving ball coming down a hill, gaining speed and traction, banks are starting to wake up to it. I thought this was interesting because you saw Santander, advertisement for one of the websites, and we've seen this as well. Our customers are now investing in these properties because they know that that's the first point of interaction for a customer. What they're doing is they're saying, okay, I'm going to invest in an auto comparison shopping site because what I'm going to do is I want to catch the customer at their point of need. I'm buying a car. And then you offer auto insurance and auto funding and financing. Then this happened. Again, you continue to see the evolution. Again, not game-changing quite yet. People still could experiment with the mobile phone. They were building mobile apps to do some basic banking functions. But as you kept on moving forward, you started to see more and more digital tools becoming available. Smartwatches, virtual assistants. Now you've got digital wallets that are being used. Essentially, your mobile phone is the branch of the future. That is clear. These are banks that have acknowledged that this is their business model. They're going after the world of digital, the digital user, the digital buyer. You don't need to have branches anymore. It doesn't mean they're going away. These people, if you're going to lend money of a significant amount or you're doing complicated transactions, you're going to need someone to talk to. But more and more, digital is the de facto default for interactions. And that's not just in Asia, that's not just in Latin America, that's across the world. One of the commentaries I always make when I talk about digitization is, this is also a bit about financial inclusion. If you look at the first picture of the Main Street, banking was really at its foundation something for the rich and wealthy. So was the technology. The only way you could be a bank was to buy a mainframe, and buying a mainframe was not cheap. The only way to be a bank is you'd have to build branches. Building branches aren't cheap. With the advent of digital technology and streamlined processes, now you could start to offer banking services to a larger number of people. One example is in the United States, opening up a checking account in the United States costs the bank about $1,000 a year. That's just to cover the cost of the employees, the tools that they're being used. That's $1,000 they lose each year just opening up a checking account. A digital-only bank can do that for about $80. And that's really just to cover the cost of their developers building the mobile app and their technology behind it. That to me is a game changer. That means now I can offer banking services to a larger group of individuals. And I'll show you a slide in Colombia why I think it's really interesting what's happening in Colombia and Latin America as a whole. Colombia and Mexico, probably the two. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't show this. The digital-only bank or neobank from Banco Colombia. Again, it's not that. That's why I'm going through these slides pretty quickly because I think I'm preaching to the choir at this point. Digital banking is a real thing, and this is great that the tools are out there for people to use mobile-only banking. But let's get beyond the banking model and the business model and going beyond just the mobile app. There's something more fundamental that needs to happen in banks for them to be more competitive in this world. Like I said, it's about thriving, not just surviving. Because if you wanted to survive, all you could have to do is just throw a mobile app up there. If you don't get that cost basis down to $80 for a checking account, you're not going to get the financial inclusion. You're not going to be able to expand your scope. Rich people, to be honest, will want face-to-face interactions. Private banking is a face-to-face kind of interaction. But if you want to capture the rest of the market, you need to be very efficient. So what does thriving look like? Well, I'm going to show you what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like this. Again, this is a picture of a data center that's maybe 30 or 40 years old, so I'm being a bit confrontational on purpose. But if you think about this, This is how banks used to be. They used to own their own data centers. They used to build their own equipment. They used to lease the mainframes from a vendor. They used to build all their own software. It was self-enclosed. It was encapsulated within their own bank. I was really happy to see Capgemini talk about open banking because to me that's the world of the future. It's not only looking at your own internal capabilities, but it's tapping into the rest of the world around you. If you take open banking plus the shopping malls of the future, which are these digital marketplaces, if you look at what's powering the data centers of the future, which are clearly not inside the bank's four walls, they are now increasingly hosted by third parties, such as Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Alibaba. I mean, the list goes on. You could probably spend the next 15 minutes just talking about the number of cloud providers that are out there that have infrastructure. But again, it's about being able to take advantage of the work of other people and focusing on your core competencies. And for most banks, that's not building more data centers. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I talked about financial inclusion. 39% have a checking account. Now, there's multiple reasons for this. Some of it is because of the economics of owning a checking account for the bank. Some of it is that because of fees and charges and other things that the customers would acquire but based on owning a checking account that they don't want to afford or they don't have the means to pay for it. But to me, this is the opportunity. It's not about competing for the existing marketplace. To me, that battle is already in fierce pitch battle already. To me, the future is fighting for the next 60%. I don't think you'll get to 100% of financial inclusion in any country. Even the United States, that has a lot of banking services, doesn't have 100%. In Europe as well. But I still think you can get another 40%. To me, that's the opportunity. That's what makes I think this digital transformation exciting. I throw this picture up to talk a little bit about Industry 4.0. You've seen the hype. McKinsey is the one that birthed the idea of Industry 4.0. It's been picked up by others. But I think there's a lot of truth to this. What I read about in this is if you think that your existing business model, being in those four walls, existing only within the context of your own products and services, is going to carry you for the next 10 years, that's probably not true. As you can see, there's emerging marketplaces that are being birthed. I showed a couple on the websites. Those are the new marketplaces in which people compete in and need to participate in. Those don't all say bank. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, what I want to do is I want to wake up in the morning and stand in a queue and then do some banking. That's not the goal. The goal is I want to buy a house. I want to buy a car. I need to save money. I need to do something for education or healthcare. I have human needs, and I assure you, it's not doing a transaction. That's no different than me saying, the thing that I want to do is wake up in the morning and pay my hotel bill. No, I wanted the hotel. The fact that I had to pay the bill is part of the process. I think that what you start to see is, restaurants, hotel, auto and gasoline, housing, healthcare, media, entertainment. All these things are the things that people want to do. Banks need to be where the people are, not where they hope them to be. I even go back to the very first slide. The very premise of a bank is being where the people are. And if your people are on digital channels and digital properties, banks need to be with them as well. So I'm doing a bit of a pitch for open banking and APIs and open APIs. Again, I think that this is just proven out by the fact that banks need to migrate where their customers are. So you've seen probably many different slides about digital businesses. And I kept these